Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Fitness Fables and Fatherhood. This is your host, Josiah, with my co-host, Eric the Blue. Eric, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hello, everybody.
I don't know if the weather has been terrible for you up where you are compared to down here, but we are like waterlogged beyond imagine.
Are you really? I think we had one day of some downpours. It wasn't too bad. It's just been humid, though. It's just kind of lingering heat that just doesn't want to give us a break. So I'm looking forward to fall. Hopefully, these next couple weeks start to cool down.
I'm looking forward to fall just to get you to read a horror book. But speaking of never letting up, we today are going to be reviewing The Gate of the Feral Gods, which is book number 4 of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I know for you, this one was pretty good, but we can get into some details in a little bit. They just keep getting longer and longer. This book is, I believe, like 600 pages. The next is 700, which I'm about halfway through. And then the 6th book is 800 pages. So this just keeps trucking along.
And to me, it didn't feel like it was longer, just because now I feel like we've got momentum. Right now, the gears are turning. It's not just the action piece. You got the political drama, you got the story behind the story. So to me, this is, again, like I keep thinking this is like an adult Harry Potter collection, right? Mm-hmm. So good.
Yeah, this book has a lot more to it than the other books did. We're finally starting to bring things together and wrap up some storylines, get some closure on a few things, maybe a few too many things, which you'll hear about in my spoiler discussion in a bit. But do you want to give a quick sort of recap of, for those that haven't read Dungeon Crawler Carl yet, haven't started it, just sort of the overarching book 1 introduction?
Sure. So Dungeon Crawler Carl, we follow this everyday character who one day wakes up. He has a ex-girlfriend who's chasing a cat out of a window, grabs the cat. Aliens come. The whole world falls into like this, into the ground, into an abyss, and it collapses, if you will, into a dungeon. Aliens take over. There's this like AI that it's almost like a video game that overlays. Apparently, everyone has something in their brain, so they can kind of like see almost like a HUD, if you will. So text appears, so it's almost like they're in a video game. It gives them the option. You can go into the dungeon or you can stay on the surface and try to survive, if you will. So Dungeon Crawler Carl and his cat go into the dungeon. The cat goes from being a pet to its own crawler. It takes a magic pill and turns it into a sentient being. And so they team up. And they're trying to progress almost like a video game. Each layer of the dungeon, kind of like Dante's Inferno, you're going all the way down to level 18. If you can get to level 18, then you could get your freedom. Nobody has made it that to level 18 in all the different galaxies that this has been done. And we find out through the last couple of books that this is actually used as an entertainment purposes. It's kind of a commercial broadcast of a series that's publicized to the rest of the world. So you've got some really interesting dynamics between different political galactic civilizations that are vying for control. And so as we go along, characters can be sponsored by these different organizations. They can get boxes that help them to proceed within the dungeon. The dungeons, each floor has kind of a different motif, and there are certain floors like 3, 6, 9 that repeat the same kind of narrative, and they have different themes that are going on outside of the battles that these dungeon crawlers are trying to go through. And so there are kind of storylines, if you will, with the NPCs that are continuing outside of this. We learn along books 2 and 3 that actually some of the characters of the home inhabitant planet are actually taken and they are reused or recycled to be some of the bosses. And so we kind of humanize now with some of the bosses. And we also kind of find out that some of those players that have gotten down to lower levels have gotten contracts to be able to play a different role, have some sort of freedom, but are still kind of tied within the game. So we learned that Donut the cat, as well as Dungeon Crawler Carl, they now have a manager, or I should say Donut has a manager within their party named Mordecai, and he is a shapeshifter. And so he has gotten through, what was it, level 13 in the past, and then was given a contract, 12 or 13.
I'm not quite
something.
sure. I don't think quite level 13, because I think the furthest
12.
anyone has ever made it is 12.
Yes.
I think he got to level
after 10
or 11. And after 10, I believe you are offered a way out. And at 18, then you get to save your planet. And you get some freedom for your homeworld at 18, which no one has ever done before.
So you've kind of now gotten some of these backstories with NPCs, but also other player characters who have gotten out of the dungeon, but now play different indentured servitude type of roles, right? So Mordecai is now playing as their manager. He will continue with the group for as long as Donut is going through the dungeon. Is that correct?
Yeah, as long as Donut is still crawling, then Mordecai is along with. Mordecai can be killed, as they say, in the dungeon. So if he dies in the dungeon, he is removed from said dungeon, but he doesn't die in the world outside the dungeon itself. He is effectively immortal as a being, but in the dungeon, it's like you have one life. So if he puts himself in danger, then he can be removed from the dungeon and not be available to Donut and Carl.
And this was his last crawl. If he would have been done, if he wouldn't turned into a manager, he would have been out after, I think, the 4th floor.
Mm-hmm.
So effectively, when he's done, he should be free. Although we know there's some pain in his background, so he hasn't been. We know that he's wanted to get out, but there's definitely some backstory that we want to learn more about. Some other former player characters that also appear too, that he has some background that we haven't found out a lot about. So a lot of intrigue with all the different characters. We start to learn a little bit about, kind of what's going on outside, right? So without going into too much more detail, I'll turn it back to you, Joe.
Yeah, in this book, we finally start to get some adventure, some intrigue, and a bit of action in the outside world, as Carl is finally sort of brought out and making moves outside of the game itself. He's been sort of plotting and planning for a while, but in this book in particular, we start to see some movement on his end to break the rest of them. It's one of my big issues with this book, actually, which we will talk about in a bit. But as I said, this one, finally, we start to get a little bit of closure on some of the things set up in the first 3 books. So given the nature of this book, we're back out of the general sort of continual storyline floors of 369, 12, 15, etc. We're back into sort of the interim floors, the ones that don't have this continuous storyline, that don't have the elites present. And we'll try to keep the majority of this beginning parts to just the basics to avoid any serious spoilers. But currently, book 4 takes place on floor 5. Yeah, because book 3 was floor 4. Yep. So this is floor 5. We are in bubbles. So the interesting thing about this book is that the crawlers, unlike book 3, you have all of the crawlers working together. Well, most of the crawlers working together to get out of the train tunnels, out of the iron tangle. In this, we have the crawlers purposefully split up amongst various bubbles, which each bubble contains 4 sort of circular, self-contained rings that have a boss that has to be defeated, a castle that must be sieged in order for that ring to open to the crawlers around. So each bubble has somewhere between 20 and 30, I believe, crawlers in it. And each ring has somewhere between like 5 and 6 crawlers in it, somewhere in there, maybe a few more. So we're introduced to a couple new characters in this book. We are introduced to, or given a little more backstory to some of the characters we already know, but this is a much smaller cast of characters, at least at the beginning, compared to the other books. So, what was your thoughts on sort of the cut down nature of this book compared to the books prior?
Well, this was just perfect, right? You went from the iron tangle, and again, like I love how Matt Didman sets these up, and like it's this, you get thrown into a crazy chaotic world, and then you got to make some order, and you got to, there's different ways that you have to play the game to succeed, right? So the last one, we got so hopeful because now Carl is seen as kind of a leader figure. He was, propped up by everyone. We started to get this communal sense of people maybe starting to work together. Yay. And then purposefully, right? Yes, they're dispersed and they're isolated within these bubbles. So great metaphor. I love it. And then even among that, folks who are within the bubble, I don't know if you mentioned this, right? They get dispersed between the different bubbles, and they kind of have to unlock each bubble in those orders to be able to get access to one another and to be able to get access all the way through. Yep. So just the fact that you had this sense of optimism, and then he squashes it from the very beginning, and it's so desolate that you feel like there's no chance at all. And it's so palpable that when they enter this world that you go from being super hopeful to just decimated. So I absolutely loved the setup for this. The exposition was great, but you've still got that cast characters that you love. You got Carl, Donut, right, Katia, and Mongo, as we enter this world. So you're just left wondering, like, how the heck are they going to get through and win this?
Yeah, each bubble is sort of its self-contained world, and they're not the same. Each bubble is different. And then you have those concentric rings, those different layers within the bubble that are each separate. So you have groups of crawlers, like small parties in each ring, in each bubble. You can't go beyond rings, you can't go beyond bubbles until you clear your goal. So if
And
you are able to take your castle, now you can leave your ring. And if you pop your bubble by taking all 4 castles, then you can
yes.
leave your bubble and go to other bubbles. So there is the opportunity to work together. And it was set up nicely in the 3rd book where Carl and Donut meet everybody and they exchange their fist bumps, get everyone's contact information, because even as they're separate between these circles and these layers upon layers, they can still communicate via their chat function. So
Yep.
they're able to talk about sort of their plans and what they're doing moving forward. Go
And
ahead.
I'll mention just, in these bubbles are sort of elemental. So you've got the sand, kind of a sand bubble. You've got a water world. You've got a kind of air world, if you will. What's the other one?
Yeah.
The necropolis, I guess, right? Is that the other one?
Yeah, the tomb is what it's called.
The tomb. Yep.
Yeah, because they each roll or they spin a wheel at the end of book 3 to see kind of where they're going to go. And it doesn't pick which bubble you're going to, but if you, depending on what you roll, what you spun, you end up in that ring. So Carl and Donut, they rolled the, I believe, circle. So they end up in the air layer. And then, as you said, there's a water and like a tomb and then a land layer as well. So we end up, as you said, because Katia and Donut and Carl are a party, they all go together. So it didn't split parties up. It kept parties together. So this book, well, let's transition because it's hard to talk about these books without giving some spoilers. So let's transition to like the spoiler part of this. If anyone wants to bounce out now, that's fine. But this gives us a little more freedom to kind of talk about exactly what happens. Everybody, couple seconds here. All right, Eric. So this book, the pacing for me was a bit much.
I thought it was
Yeah,
like
right?
chef's kiss. I liked it.
Yeah,
Which part did you see? I felt like this was a great like harmony of like both
I
the pacings from before. Like,
yeah. So I felt this was hectic. Like it was a breakneck pace from start to finish. Something was always happening, something was always finishing. And for me, this I would put as just above book 1. So
Okay.
based on our last review, I thought book 3 was the best. Then book 2 very slimly behind that. Then this one with a decent kind of drop, and then book 1 being the worst because book 1 was just a lot of setup. There
Yeah,
was
that's true.
book 1 and book 4, this book in my case, they were very much like opposite as far as the problems that they had.
Hmm.
And I still love this book. Like I am later on I'm going to give it a good score.
Yeah.
But book 1, there was no plot. It was all set up, it was all introduction to the like system. It was a lot of exposition, a lot of trying to get you to understand what was going on. Book 4, we're getting resolution after resolution after resolution and moving like because of how it was structured with the rings and the bubbles, and it's like, oh, we took the castle and now we're here and now we are in the
Mm,
submarine and now we're over here
yeah.
and now we blew up the bomb in outer space and now we're over here, and the Chris thing is ending, and we're wrapping up Frank and his wife's sort of storyline from the beginning, and we're
Yep.
getting like everything kind of wrapping up so quickly together that it was almost like being on a roller coaster, which some
Oh
people
man.
love it.
Yeah. Well, to me, okay, so like this is the to me, I like that analogy of this being similar to one, because one was about that individual journey of how he was going to go and survive and thrive right on his own, the crawl.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're transcending that with this, this the anarchist cookbook, right? And he is now becoming someone new. This to me is now, it is the exposition of that external world, because before we just cared about Carl, now we care about everyone else, right? And it's bigger and beyond himself. And so yeah, we need to kind of like close, get some momentum, close some of those stories as we think about his individual journey, as we think now about what's more important, which is that external world, and what is he like, who cares between him and the other characters, right? Or like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you frame yourself now with these alliances versus, Quan Chi or Quan CH, right? Or how are you thinking about Lucia Mar now, right? Given that we kind of know that they will doctor some of the photos in these reviews to make Carl look like a crazy person. How do we really feel about this poor child who has been, going through the dungeon kind of on her own with her dogs, right? A kind of analogous character with these pet characters. So I'm kind of getting excited to kind of think about, is Lucia Mar somebody who we're going to have, potentially some empathy for in the future? I don't know. Right. We don't get any hints right here, but to me, this is that it's the excitement of, oh my gosh, we now kind of understand the consequences within the world. And we're starting to be really curious about what's going on beyond it.
Right. And I just in the end of this book, I felt like Matt Dinneman had set up so much, and he needed to wrap some things before moving forward. That was just kind of the way I perceived it as I was going through it. But I
Yeah.
do agree, like you do care a lot about these other characters. So even then in the back of my head, I'm thinking about these other bubbles and what's going on and how are the other characters getting through. And you get little through the chat features like from Bautista, how
Mm-hmm.
he's progressing through. And via the nightly recaps, like what's going on with Florin, because we know that Florin, given the fact that his like girlfriend, that his love died at the hands of Lucia Mar or at the hands of Florin, given something that Lucia Mar did, that he's just kind of left there at the spinning station and doesn't move forward. So you do have these connections with the other characters, and you do miss sort of being, in my opinion, you miss being there with them. This is back to mostly Carl and Donut and Katya and introducing more characters. And I do believe that it was necessary for the next book. But that's me being 40 chapters into book 5. There are things that go on that you need this book for the next book. So, yeah.
I'm going to jump for a second, but I have one question for you. When we think about the portals within this book versus the portals within book 3, in book 3, the Valte had given Carl a pill to be able to allow for him to be able to like see details around a portal, give him some information. In the second one, they give him a pill to be able to see like elevation and some other metrics, which helps him for like the flying. But a key central piece of this book is about this gate to the feral gods, and it's about this sort of portal. And then I don't recall him having any kind of like detail, like it didn't go into him, if I can remember.
I don't think
leveraging
so.
that. So
yeah, I don't think so, because the way that the gate kind of opens, it's very quick.
Yeah,
so I don't think he has the opportunity to really like look in. And that's another kind of problem that I had with this book that kind of lowers it, is a lot of his thought process is hidden from the reader. Not only hidden from like the other characters in the book, but he comes up with a plan, and what he outwardly discusses is not available for us. Or what he outwardly discusses is not the same as what he's thinking, and what he's thinking is not available to us as the reader. So you're constantly wondering, like, okay, I know what you're saying isn't actually what you're going to do, because you keep mentioning this plan to Katya, and you don't know what it is. And I think that's meant to be kind of a little bit of an intrigue position for the reader to be like, try to keep them guessing. But for me, it just felt, I don't know, a little like cheap. Like I wanted to know more as I'm going through the book, and it wasn't satisfying.
I would say the only time that I felt like it wasn't satisfying was, I feel like whether it was just me reading it, but there was a portion where they are giving, they're exchanging some messages with the kind of like magic ink back and forth between players in the bathroom stall, right?
Yep.
And I think that if they would have maybe played that out a little bit more in a different area where it was more known to help you like forecast that was coming, right? If we could have been involved just a little bit more on some of these things, that could have been helpful. But you're right, like there is kind of an element. I actually would say I like that him playing with us a little bit, right? But there are like some moments where it does make it just a little bit hard to follow, to really like understand, like, is this something where he's like trying to leverage this cookbook, right? Or not? And then like, is it really believable? So, unless you're current with, these little blips of things that have happened in the past that you've held on to, if you're not paying close enough attention, it could pull you out. So I would kind of agree and disagree in certain areas, because again, like, I'm going to take us outside of the book and outside of the realm entirely. And I just wanted to think for a second about, J.R.R. Martin in Game of Thrones. And I thought it was really interesting as J.R.R. Martin got the contract with HBO, and he had his series. And then towards the end, I think his book was I'll totally admit I didn't read the end, but I remember hearing a lot about how the end book was like a lot different than how it was portrayed in the HBO series. So
you don't have to be honest, because he didn't finish. He hasn't written the last book yet.
He hasn't read it? Well, maybe that's part of it, right?
It's a big problem, actually.
It's a huge problem. But and this is part of it where I'm really excited about the fact that he hasn't written the end books, and he's gotten so much fandom that now it's been announced that he is at NBC. Somebody has picked up this, and they're going to make it into a series. So
yeah, I think it's going to be on Peacock.
Yeah,
he hasn't written the last book, but he also has said that he is like actively knows kind of how it's going to end.
Yeah,
because he plans on splitting the last book up and all of that. But
so now bringing it full circle. So then to me, right, like the exciting part about him not telling us what what Carl is doing when with the cookbook, right? And all the things that he's learned about like what goes on in the real world and how
Mm-hmm.
he shares that with the audience, the book, right? Through the book. Now we're going to enter into real life. So it makes me feel like Matt is a little bit like Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's make it
It's
real.
I agree. I feel like I would have liked it better had there been just a little more evidence somewhere that they were discussing things, because they mentioned the
Yeah.
bathroom one
Yeah.
time.
I get that. A little fast
Some of
paced.
the
Yep.
other, and I understand, like he has to keep it. Like, we're the audience, right?
Yeah.
And in the book, he is presenting, he is acting for this intergalactic audience. And
It,
And we know that there's some discussion back and forth, and some of what he's saying, his plans and what he's doing, he's trying to work over the corporation so that they give him things and give him leniency in certain ways so that
yeah.
he can actually complete his plan. He has to hide what it is. And so I understand that. And I do get, I like the fact that we are sort of in the position of the audience of the show, Dungeon Crawler Carl, throughout the book as well. So I like the mystery, but I wish there was just a little more, because it's so much is kind of left out at the end. You're like, wait,
Yeah.
like, so I knew you were
Yeah.
talking to Elle, and I knew you were talking to Amani, and I knew you were doing this, but there, none of that mattered or was like 100% real,
Yeah.
except for the fact that you needed to pass this gate on over and over and over again from like bubble to bubble, which is interesting. So let's get into the
Mhm.
plot of this. We already said that they have to break their rings as they go. And Donut, Mongo, Carl, they're in this air quadrant. They have to take this floating castle in the sky from some gnomes. That's their initial mission. How did you think that initial sort of plot went, that story versus the overarching story of the entire novel?
I mean, it was intriguing. I mean, it was entertaining. I don't know. It was just is everything kind of fell into place very quickly. So like,
Yeah.
I guess to your point about that, I did want to say like, I guess thinking back on it, you're right. Like I almost wish that there were 30% more chapters, but then a book would be like pretty darn beefy, right? So I feel like
Hmm.
maybe this was partly in due to like editing, having to edit stuff down and it just got condensed. But in terms of, yeah, like there's other shape changers, right? So you kind of have, oh, and I forget what their name is, but there's a group that have infiltrated these like camels who are in the city. And actually, if Mordecai can get their brains, then he can use that for a specific type of potions. So there's again, like I like the idea of like the masking, right? So the faces that they're wearing and the devices that Donut has to be right using her
Hmm.
glasses. She can see with the heat to see if like these brains apparently are hotter, and so she can kind of tell who's who. There's some weird stuff with kind of these politics between the gnomes who live up in the sky versus the camel folk, and they have prisoners on either side, and they have this complicated thing to be able to use parts of what we find to be the gate of the Fair of Gods, the components of a
Hmm.
watch that would call this. And so they have to, they can open it and they can kind of see one another, and they have an exchange of signals to be able to show one another that they have these prisoners so that they don't, right? It's the kind of a very complicated nature. And
Yeah,
so
it's kind of like an
it's a little
arc
contrived,
almost.
but yeah.
Yeah,
Go
like
ahead.
they each have the leader of the camel people, and there's two sort of species, the Bactrians and the Dromedarians, and they're
Yep.
two different villages, and they've been infiltrated by these shape changers who have had their sort of home destroyed by the gnomes. So
Mm,
the Dromedarians and the Bactrians have prisoners, like you said, of the gnome people, which stops the gnome people from just essentially dropping nukes on them from up in the sky. But if you get the two watches together with this box, you can open a gate to the this like I don't know, abyss type sort of dimension where these feral gods, these like demigods of like nature, etc., have been sort of kept for some time. You get this all introduced in the first half of the book, and that took up a pretty substantive like parts of the the pages, and then as I said, it was just like full pedal to the metal from page 300 to the finish.
Yeah.
So when we were dealing with the gnomes and that whole piece with the shape changers, etc., did you feel like there was enough sort of build up there initially to kind of pull you into the storyline of their individual bubble?
I think it was like, again, looking back, I think it was a little rushed, but because I was so excited about everything else that was working coming
Mhm.
into this story, it didn't bother me. I guess I just went along with it. But like in and of itself, like I don't know, like the bosses didn't really seem like anything that like excited about. Like there's the, I don't know, big bird thing with the saws coming off
Yeah,
from it,
yeah,
right? That like it was somewhat unsatisfying. Like it was just a way to like figure out how they're gonna use their heat seeking missiles that they've now developed, right? Gives you a little bit of a
right.
foreshadow for the next one. And like there's kind of the lame duck joke for a boss
Mhm.
of the one in the sky. And like yeah, I think that like they worked and it was fine, but like I don't know, maybe I'm just not seeing it yet. But like from
It
a
gave you, yeah, the bosses kinda gave you an insight. They didn't outwardly defeat, like, any of the bosses from a
yeah,
like, a fighting perspective. Everything was kind of
yeah,
hinted at, like, there's something here that is special about this boss, and you have to look for the hints, like the
yep,
goose up in the floating
bubble,
castle,
yep, yep.
like, couldn't be injured by you, but could
Or
be
magic.
injured by the environment, like the
Hmm.
ambient sort of stuff around the chair sitting next to the table. So that was the first introduction to that sort of combat mechanic where there are hints in what the AI tells you at the introduction to the boss battle for how you have to approach this creature.
Yep. If anything, the continuity is the adaptability of Carl to be able to leverage his environment, you know, to be able to succeed. So it's those characters that are like the most adaptable and the ones that are
Mhm.
the most connected. And you know, this whole thing about like the feral gods too, like it's not that these are just like tougher monsters. This is like a much higher tier you know, of kind of that dungeons external world, right? That like they're brought in a way that you know can totally destabilize the floor. And so that's where we kind of
Mhm.
towards the end, right? I just it's so exciting like with the start of the next one. So I can't go into the next piece, but maybe
Well,
we
and I was gonna say that's where we get the hidden secrets. Like the whole thing was he was going to use
yeah.
this gate. He's playing off of the sort of social media aspect and the fact that these businesses are listening in, and he's convinced them that he's going to release a god into a future floor to wreak havoc and chaos, and that is going to be good for views. And that's what he leads us to believe without outwardly saying it, and then kind of flips it on its axis towards the end. So yeah, they gather up all of the sort of pieces, and they're able to accomplish their goals in their bubble. When they finally accomplish their mission, they gather up all of their stuff. They they move this externally into like what's going on outside of the dungeon itself. And Carl does something pretty interesting by sneaking a bomb onto a spaceship.
Yes.
So we're starting to get some external, like outside of the game information as well from other characters. What did you think of bringing that piece in this early into the overarching storyline, considering this is going to be multiple more books.
Yeah, no, I think that we absolutely needed it now because we've been foreshadowing it. We needed a little bit more intrigue in terms of how is this going to play out, not only for Carl as he's trying to get to the level 18, but there's that maybe question of there's other off ramps too, right? There's contracts
Mm-hmm.
that could be signed to be able to get him out earlier. Does he even want to try to, you know, go all the way to the bottom? Does it matter? We've had some instances where, right, there have been characters or ships that have been blown up from space, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's already been some interaction outside of the dungeon itself. And as we think about, are there other opportunities to be able to, maybe win, or maybe that's not the goal, right? Like we've gotten some notes from other anarchists that talk about that are, have attempted to be able to either blow up administrators or others. And we've gotten details around how some have attempted and how some have failed. And so I think it was really applicable because we don't still have that through line of what exactly we think Carl is ultimately what his aims are, right? As we're going forward. We kind of have that one sentiment, right? Is don't let them break you. But where is that going to
Yeah.
take you?
And in this book, he specifically says that he's going to break them. And
Right.
he has looked through the anarchist cookbook. He knows that the people in the past have tried something similar. There are some examples of what others have done. He learns, I believe it was in this book, that there has been a record number of assassinations with people outside of the dungeon, where like they don't bring Lucia Marr out anymore
Right.
because of her shenanigans outside of the dungeon itself. But we're starting to get this idea that Carl plans on bringing this entire system down from the outside. I again think it was in this book, and now that we're caught up moving forward, we shouldn't have to like protect
Yeah.
so much being able to tell what's in future books.
Yeah.
But the fact that he mentions, I believe that the Naga were like bankrupted by one of the dungeon anarchists that he finds in the cookbook. He wants to accomplish something similar on an even grander scale. And at the end, he ends up submerging the entirety of the ninth floor with the never ending ocean in the outside ring. So he kills a huge number of NPCs because at this point he believes that the NPCs are better off dead anyway. And a significant number of like these warriors, these armies that are brought in by these outside corporations for the ninth floor, and how the ninth floor's like faction wars occurs. And at this point, they're not able to bring in more armies. So he is effectively changing and altering future floors from where he is quite successfully.
Yeah. And, and I feel like there's still enough tension where there's a forward momentum that they have to go through as they still are subject to the rules of the AI, who's kind of a third party entity, which they've described as kind of its own living being. And they've kind of
Mm-hmm.
hinted a couple times too that like, things have been accelerating quicker than they have in the past. And so the AI will, I don't know, sometimes kind of break or sometimes kind of go a little, a little crazy, right? To try to balance the powers out. We've already kind of experienced how one way that the AI tried to do that was with all those celestial boxes, right? And so it's kind of interesting as you play with the AI and play to the needs of the AI, how can that be an interesting element, right? So we've got not only the different values of all the different galactic folks who he's starting to kind of learn a little bit more of, like who we kind of like or don't like, or right. But when we think about whether again it's NPCs, former player characters, these different systems within the universe, you know again, he's painted as this crazy character. So in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
as an anarchist, like, is he just gonna flame out? Is he just going to like throw caution to the wind and not care about anything but totally breaking the system? Or again, like, is it gonna be, in my mind, I'm wondering like how much is he getting, does he feel that familial feeling with the rest of the human race? Like, is it going to still be a push to get humanity to the end of the game, to get that freedom by playing the game, right? So are you going to play the
Right.
game, and do you only care about humans, or do you care about the galactic empire? Do you care about bettering that system so that you're kind of not playing the game, right? And
Right.
either way, like, I can kind of see like that theme going forward. So I'm just kind of curious, like, how he's going to play this out, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Because
it's
in
good.
the third book, he's trying to get as many people out as possible.
Yep.
And he's been told that he can't save everyone. And in this fourth book, he saves Chris. So the Maggie and Frank storyline kind of comes to an end for the most part. There are some sort of loose ends still, but we learn that Maggie is a different version of the Volte, this like mind worm, and has gone into Chris, and that's why Chris was acting so strange, that he is being sort of piloted like a mech suit by Maggie, and that Maggie is still hunting Carl and Donut, specifically Carl. And he's told by people that he can't save them all, but he is bound and determined to save Chris. And at a minute where he is about to take Chris out of his misery, Donut steps in and changes things, kind of saving and sequestering Chris away so that Carl doesn't have to give in to the sort of player killer side of things, and he
Yeah.
doesn't get a skull next to his name. But we got a whole slew of new characters in this book. So from the beginning, we get our new compatriots in their circle. I think we had Louis or Lewis. We had, trying to remember, Faraz, I think was his name. Trying to know how to pronounce that. Then
Yeah.
we had your Langley and his sort of archery group, and others in other sort of circles. We have Gwen. We have, what was his name? Starts with a T.
To be honest, I
Another
kind of forget.
another
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's we're starting to get a lot of them, but
Yeah.
we we have all of these new characters. Brittany is another character that they kind of come
Mhm.
with on this. Samantha, the greatest character of the entire series, I think.
The head.
Yep. What did you think of the additional cast of characters in this book as we sort of step away from the Lena and that group and Bautista? We're away from those people, and now we've got another set of individuals.
Yeah, I mean, it was a natural progression from book 3 now to book 4. Again, we've done all the fist pumps, and so it only makes sense that we're going to start kind of caring more about like that leaderboard as well, because we have these bounties that are put over the top player board's heads, and so it adds a whole nother element of fear amongst the players in terms of those who might try to better themselves. So it's not just about the humans trying to get to the end of the line.
Mm-hmm.
It's now about how do you get to the end of the line that matters. Do you do it just for selfish purposes, or and take out the top players and benefit yourself?
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of see Quan CH as being such a poop head,
Yeah, yeah,
and out for himself. And I mean, he again I feel like gets chances, and he's an easily hateable character, and so it's interesting to see the team kind of rally around this group, right? And so how is that going to play out from one level to the next, especially when you have these alliances already that influence those other characters. So, I mean, we've already seen how Hecla and her group could be influenced by by one person, and so
Mm-hmm.
now they're disbanded, right? Like, what does that mean? And as we see Katia grow in herself, we saw an instance where Carl is taken out for some time, and Katia steps into her role and actually
Mm-hmm.
pumps herself up, and so it's really interesting to see that it's not just Carl being this one heroic figure. It is, these other very powerful characters also, working together independently with their own storylines. And I like that. I
Mm-hmm.
like that it's not just all a book about Carl. It's a book about these other characters. And I like the play with seeing a little bit. There are a lot of them, but I think that makes sense, and it also plays into like that chaotic feeling. And it also, at this
Yeah.
point, there's enough other characters. I think there's still hundreds of thousands. What is it, 800,000 or something? I think it's under 1 million at this point,
It is under
or
1 million. It
400.
might actually be under 100,000, to be honest. I think
Is
it
it
might be
okay?
80,000.
It could be. I mean, yeah. Anyway, like this number is still big enough where, I mean, they've got hundreds. What was it, like 500? I can't even remember. 500 of these bubbles that as everyone was separated. So, I mean, it's just interesting as we think about all the different ways that this could have gone wrong, right? And it always feels like Carl gets to the end almost by chance, but
Yeah.
maybe there is some fate in the human, and maybe it's not human, but maybe there's this sense of, this altruistic kind
Mhm.
of thing that's going to pull them through
Yeah, and so
this
there's
quality.
178,000 crawlers at the start of the floor,
Okay.
and I
Okay.
think there's like 80,000. I think nearly half of them are killed on this floor.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, he's constantly kind of falling forward, but he's also doing it by playing everyone off of each other.
Yes.
He has the AI, which is going insane. And you're told that they always do. The AIs always go insane and are sort of left out to pasture at the end and of each season. And this AI has taken a liking to Carl and specifically Carl's feet. And we get the sense of when Carl does something that the AI doesn't like, it gets mad at him. But when he does things that the AI likes, it gives him special bonuses. Plus, playing the Volte off of the Borant Corporation and the fact that they let his plan go through. Like they knew he was going to do something to affect future floors. And because it was good for ratings, they let him do it, even though it wasn't. He ends up doing something that they didn't initially plan. And he's got this deal with the corporation that's sort of secondary program from the third floor as we move into the sixth floor. So he's creating all these relationships to push him forward. And when everyone has a stake in him continuing to exist, but he's also making the other crawlers, making them sort of more important players as well, and giving them the license to sort of take ownership of their story and moving forward. Because at the end of this, Katya, she says, I'm going to leave the group. I have my own things I have to take care of. And when you're introduced to Lewis and Langley and the Faraz, they are completely underleveled. They should not be this far along. And Faraz and Lewis are sort of drunkards and are constantly sort of just hanging out at the brothel in town, just kind of intoxicated. So he's given them some capability and some ownership of sort of their own future. So he's creating these relationships, and there's a character for everyone. Like
Yeah.
if you like philosophy and sort of looking at the what does it mean to be human and human nature and religion, etc., you have Bautista. And if you sort of like the action hero, big bombs exploding, you have Carl. If you like the sort of parental, doting motherly character, you have Katya. There's a character for kind of everyone to latch onto. They're presented at different amounts throughout the writing of the book, and more in certain books than others, but there's someone sort of for everyone in here, and someone that's representative of everyone, which I find sort of refreshing.
And, you know, when we think about like as this gets turned into a series, right? And like as we've, again, I'm going to go back to Game of Thrones as well, because when you think about what they did with that overarching series, and then they had the spin-offs from, you know, the Realm of the Seven Kingdoms, and they've got the House of the Dragon and some others. You know, sometimes I look at this and these casts of characters, and I'm invested in some of these other characters to a point where I would love in some ways to be able to get a little more of behind the scenes and how
Yeah,
that may play out. And like, because as we
you want
run
the
through
spin-off.
this, I do, because it's
Yeah,
like I've got this whole thing of like what Carl wants to do. But man, I would love to see in the future books, like if there's ways that Carl's plans are maybe thwarted by other characters, but then to be able to maybe humanize them. So that's where like I go back to Lucia Marr, because I kind of think like if this is his kind of antagonist within the
the
you know, on the
dungeon.
other
Yeah.
other side of the dungeon, right? Like I'd kind of love to be able to see through her eyes how crazy Carl is, right? Like, and have, you know, so again, like I like this. I like that you've got different personalities that you could cling on to, right? And so I could totally see him like going and writing more in the same vein, and having it be a success. So
So, what were your end thoughts of the book? What would you sort of give this book on the rating
yeah.
scale that we've been using? What are your expectations for sort of future books?
Okay, so albeit that, like, I think you had some really good points about pacing that I didn't think about in the past. Like, I think before, I think I said 8.5 for book 3. I've been progressively, I think, getting stronger, and here
Hmm.
again, I like this even better than the book before it, because I felt like, again, the pacing of just the action was balanced with the pacing of the plot. I feel like you're getting a nice mix of the you know, the intrigue. You're not losing that sense of like intrigue for what's going to happen next, right? These are still page turners every chapter. Chapters are nice and like short enough to digest it really quickly.
Hmm.
It's plain enough where I'm not like losing too many details, albeit there's like some of these where they were a little quickly paced. So in some regards, I'd kind of say maybe like 8.5, but I want to give it a 9, just because I like where he's taking us. I like this journey, that it's still unexpected about, you know, how do you look at your environment? How do you act within it? And there's just a lot of questions that I want to have answered. So I think a solid 9, because I want y'all to read all the rest. So high hopes.
Yeah,
How about you?
I give it a 7.5. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I am in the middle of the fifth book. It's definite. Every book has been good. Like I just want to temper like expectations for the reader who thinks they're going into like a literary classic. It's
Yeah.
not that. Like this
Yeah.
is
It's not.
compared to like a I don't know a 5-star sort of hotel with everything included. This like immaculate, amazing experience. This is like a fun time in college. Like
Yeah.
you can't afford the 5-star hotel. This is still fun. It is a great time, but it isn't fancy. So don't expect fancy.
Yeah.
But I give it
It
a
is what
solid
it
7,
is.
and it is what it
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah.
it's a great time. So I give it a 7.5. I wouldn't get it up to the 8s. I am just spoilers for next time, and we will be caught up, so we won't
Yeah.
be as sort of wishy washy with the details on things. But book 5 so far is my favorite of all of
Okay.
them for many reasons. So
I'm on
seven and a
chapter
half,
3, so I'm
yeah,
not nearly as far as you, but definitely like even the start, I'm intrigued, right?
yeah. And I'm on chapter 40. So this book it's split into multiple sort of mini books, and I think I'm in the third one. It's the fifth book is great. So
Okay.
keep on reading, everybody. And this is no reason to temper the expectations moving forward, because the fifth book is really good. All right. So we have to go and help with the kids. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Football's about to start. A couple more weeks.
Vikings won yesterday. Woo!
Vikings won. I still feel for JJ, though. All right.
Yeah.
Everybody, have a good weekend. Take
All right.
care.